Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to AfroPolitical Communications, the only #1 political communication to change the world, where a leader starts from and spread to other parts of the world. Afro, we advise leaders and we train them to become better leaders, to create a well-defined and a happy community. Today, as you see me, we are going to look at the Black history. Black history, as you know that today in Canada and across the world, in the United States and United Kingdom, we are celebrating what we call February, the Black History Month. February, the Black History Month. And today, without wasting time, I'm going to talk about the impact of this, what you call the Black History Month in Canada, United States, Britain, maybe, and other countries. You as Africans and other races across the world, we want to understand the impacts of this month, the positive or negative impacts of this month. Why do the West celebrating this month? What has been these achievements that contributed by the Africans, the black community? This is what we want to look at today. Remember, 50 years ago, over 50 years ago, the great American black son, Dr. Martin Luther King, he said, "I have a dream that one day the white and black son will sit on the same table, not considered because of whatever, but their contribution." Today, I think the Black history is still a commemoration of what Dr. Martin Luther King he said in the last 50 to over 50 years ago. Black history in Canada, why do we celebrate it? What is the Black history? The Black history in the world were created by students. They were students advocating for the Black history at the University of Kent. Students realized that there was considerable strong point contribution the black races and their contribution in America and other countries across the world, and therefore there was a need to celebrate for their contribution, as you can see other races. But if we just look analytically, how far does the African races, African contribution, black Africans contribution, history, their history has been credited in terms of education, medicine, employment, in what extent? Some of the one of the founders of the Black history here in Canada, she's still asking the question of relevance, the relevance of Black history. Some they believe that African Black history, Africans, the black races, the Caribbeans, they contributed in the First World War, in the Canadian Armed Forces, the Second World War. They have been interpreters of the West in Canada. They have been writers. They have been politicians within Canada, United States, and therefore these contributions, they need to be celebrated. That's I like that. I like that compliment. But still, we're going to go back. Black History Month celebration, tokenism, Black History Month celebration, tokenism. Faizo Kute, February 19, 2013. Social movement. The Black history, those who doesn't know, it sparked off what you call the American Civil Rights Movement. The American Civil Rights Movement. The rights of women, the rights of black people, the rights of migrants, the rights of all races, United States, came as a result of the strong advocacy, the contribution of black people. The same thing here in Canada. Black people were not sleeping. They spent their lives, they spent their contributions in all aspects of government to make sure that their role should be considered. They did the best in what we call today multicultural Canada. But their contribution today, their results, should we celebrate what the Africans have today, what they have gained, what has been the positive results of their struggle for the black history? In universities, are African studies included or excluded? How many universities in Canada, in America, that include African studies as major, like other studies like Chinese history, the Japanese history, the Asian history, Asian majors? How many universities in Canada and other countries in America, Britain, that respect African professions, African mind, African intellectuals, and African education? If we are to examine and understand the role of black history in Canada and other countries. Let us look at the migrants in Canada and other countries. The black migrants, Caribbean and Africans, in terms of employment. What has been the percentage for these people, despite the fact that they studied here in Canada, they got their degrees here in Canada, they got their degrees in America, they got their degrees in United Kingdom? What is the percentage of these people that are employed as professionals in medicine, in history, economy, and other aspects of parts of professional fields within Canadian context? These are all contributions, because if we include them into multiculturalism, it is the other way of paying them back for their contribution and recognize their intellectual mental abilities. AfroPolitical communication is we are trying to examine what is really the meaning of black history in Canada, despite that they are visible things the black people have contributed to this country. But how have they been paid for their contribution? How have been the black people paid for their contribution in order to celebrate? Should we celebrate for their isolation, or we are celebrating for their contribution? I don't want a Black History Month. Black history is American history, says Morgan Freeman. Morgan Freeman, this is what he said, and he added on, this month you'll see no shortage of functions organized by historical societies, libraries, schools. How many functions has been organized by the Canadian government to celebrate for this month? The libraries, the schools, the universities. How many of these institutions have come up to organize? If you look at the celebration of Black history in Canada, you are going to look at into communities, very isolated communities like in Nova Scotia, Vancouver, very isolated small communities. That's where these celebrations are being organized, that they are celebrating for the Black History Month. But in actual sense, history reveals that the black people, black history contributed a very great positive impact towards the multiculturalism of Canada we have today. This is what we need to understand. It is a Black History Month. Celebration has become a long way since 1950s. 8 decades, countries that have been celebrating for Black history. When Harvard educated Carter G. Woodson founded the Negro History Week, he was popularly known as the father of Black history. Choose the second week of February to just correspond with Abraham Lincoln's approved of American 13th Amendment of the Constitution, abolition of slavery. So you can see abolition of slavery, February. The birth of prominent advocate, black advocate, Frederick Douglass. That's why we celebrate this month in February, because the Constitution, American Constitution by Abraham Lincoln, that abolished slavery, was amended in February. And also the birth of great founder of advocacy of black advocacy, Frederick Douglass. It also happened in February. So these two events impact just compelled us to celebrate this month in February. Woodson's goal was not only to educate his own community about the heritage, but also to make American society aware of the black contributions. Our role today is not to educate only. The role of black history, but also the contribution of our heritage, the black people. So we should have celebrated these two things in Canada and other countries. 1976, during U.S. Bicentennial and the Communication Week, was expanded to United States National Black, what we call National Black Month. The National Black Month was established in 1976. This is the Black history. Celebration composed of different celebrations within the United States, and right now in Canada there are different celebrations, especially in Ontario, Toronto, where these movements started. But other people suggest, many people look forward for this month, during which the marginalized people history is given prominence in the mainstream. There is newfound just appetite for anything of the black history during these magical 28 days. We are celebrating the black history in Canada, 28 days. People question, what is its relevance and the consequences? What is the relevance of black history in Canada? What is our African education system being implemented in Canada? People come with different profession. Are they given jobs? Immigrants. How many migrants find employment after their graduation? And what can this tell to the black history? How many professions do we have that are appreciating for the Black History Month? If we change this in terms of immigration, people who are just immigrated here, how many of them who have just gained from the black history? Recently, I saw a newspaper in Canada 1 week ago. It was showing the statistics, how likely people who were born here in Canada as migrants are likely to get jobs more than those people who just came as immigrants, who just migrated here in Canada. The statistics shows that people who have just come to Canada or just migrated to Canada are unlikely to find jobs than people who have or who were born in this country. Whether you are black or not, this is Canadian newspaper. Too many there are also that history. Some people ask questions. We have been studying history in high school in Canada, in universities. How often does Canadian universities teach or implement African studies as majors at their universities? We know Chinese, Asian studies as majors, but how many universities here in Canada implemented African studies as major? Some they can say minor, but still consider them irrelevant. Some professors believe that Africa has no rich history. That's why they pay little attention to teach there. What is the relevance of this month here in Canada? We know we have been with the great politicians like William Hubbard, 1894, first black politicians. We have been with some recent politicians within on provincial, like in Mission. We had recently a Canadian African mayor. We have some African people, just Indian with black recent, just descent from within Canadian Parliament or just within the political spectrum. But at what extent should we appreciate this month? How should we appreciate this month? Based on the conditions that immigrants face, lack of employment. Even if you have a degree, you're going to find it very hard just to get into the employment. Do they have employment? Do they have jobs like other races? If you compare them with other races around the country, just how likely does it be these people are celebrating for this month their contribution in the multiculturalism? That's the question that we need to ask ourselves. It is not that they excluded, but we need to find out how likely that these people are getting jobs after their graduation, find employment within the multiculturalism like other races, so that we can appreciate their contribution within the multicultural Canada. Second, we also, another point that we should also need to think about. Immigrant in Canada, for instance, owe a great debt of gratitude to William P. Hubbard. Hubbard, elected as the first black politician in Toronto 1894, won another 13 consecutive new elections as alderman in Ward 4. He fought for the cheap hydropower and stood up for the Chinese laundry owners being forced out by rich white laundry owners. That's a great contribution. We need such a month to help arrive at the understanding of ourselves in Canadian ways. We need this month. A month like this, February, should have been a contribution, a reflection, month of reflection for Canadian government, for the multicultural government, to think about Africans. Have they attained their objectives in Canada? Someone look for employment. How many of them were just to have jobs, professions? What about African studies? How do we respect African culture in Canadian education system? If we cannot manage to think about these fundamental problems, despite the fact that they are facts that African history, black history contribution, we celebrating nothing. If we cannot think the most fundamental problems faced by the black history and how far have they been attained or achieved, then the math becomes irrelevant. That is one. Another problem that we should also think about: celebrations have been going on more than 80 decades, and the cycle of racism has been remarkably just consistent over the period. Professor Teron William note, whatever ameliorating effect of Black History Month was supposed to have had, the fact remains that it has failed to have the lasting impact on race relations in United States. Racism still a big problem, but we are celebrating for the Black History Month. I don't know how in Canada we need to look at this is a multicultural country whereby everyone is free, respect the rights of every race within Canadian context. But still, we need to find out how we are celebrating the history of our brothers, the black contributions, right away from before the period of First World War. Africans, black races have been contributing into profession as interpreters, as writers, as poets, as musicians, artists, politicians, as war front fighters in the First World War, Second World War. They fought along with the Canadian soldiers. But what has been the results, the positive impacts of their contribution? If you look at the universities within Canada, they do consider African studies as something less important, along with the other cultures like the Asian. University of British Columbia, for example, they have very, very big Jewish studies. The Jewish studies, just for Israel, a single country. UBC has Jewish studies. They have Asian studies as major, big research about Asia. But it is a struggle for students at the University of British Columbia to implement African studies as a major. The university always gets students from Africa, professors from Africa, but still has a big challenge whether they can make African studies as a major or they can still minor. Little importance at the university. UBC is the university that has been considering research all across the world, in Africa especially. Shouldn't that enough for the university to understand that it is a time now to consider African black major at the University of British Columbia? These are the questions Afro-Political Communications we are very concerned about. You find people teaching about conflict in Africa, minerals and conflict in Africa. We invite African intellectuals to speak in each and everywhere. Why don't we contribute and consider their contribution into the multicultural society? In 2014, Black History Month, Government of Canada. Black History Month posters. There is already a website. Proud of our history. Every year, Canadians are invited to participate in Black History Month activities, festivities, and events that honor the legacy of Black Canadians, past and present. Their legacy, past and present. Read the statement from Minister of Multiculturalism. 2014. Canadians take this time to celebrate the many achievements and contributions of Black Canadians through history have done so much to make Canada the culturally diverse, passionate, prosperous nation. Passionate and prosperous nation. Black history. During Black History Month, Canadians can gain insight into the experience of Black Canadians and their vital role in community. Black Canadians proudly served in both. For example, 2014, Canadians and the world will recognize the two significant anniversaries: the 100 years anniversary of the outbreak of the First World War, and the 1975, just the 75th anniversary of the outbreak of the Second World War. We can celebrate Black Month in terms of remembering the First World War, in terms of remembering the Second World War. Black Canadians proudly served in both of these conflicts. Notably, during the First World War, after the advocacy of their part of the Black Canadians were recruited for the construction of just what we call Second Construction Battalion. It was the first all-black regiment raised in Canada. Years later, despite the many barriers, their participation, including the restrictive recruitment policies that continue into the Second World War, thousands of Black Canadians persevered and served both at home and overseas in a wider variety of roles than had previously been in case. We are showing the contribution of Black people. Showing the contribution of Black people both in the military, in the government, in the medicine, in poetry, in art, in writing. But today, Black people, students at universities, still struggling to find how they should implement African major at the university. How the university in Canada should teach African studies as major. Student movement, African students, Black students, the Caribbeans, they have joined the different movements in all different parts of Canada to advocate for African studies should be implemented, should be accepted at the university as major rather than minor, or either in Simon Fraser University. Simon Fraser University here, very close in Burnaby. No African studies. If you go, you need African studies in political science. That's they have a certificate in political science. I give this example in terms of two giant universities, UBC University of Simon Fraser, how they have failed to implement, to think about the contribution of the continent in Canada and implement African studies as a major, rather than saying that it is a minor or less important at this time. That if we reflect, we dig deep into Canadian gardens, historical gardens, we are going to find that Africans, they have great contribution there. We need to think about that. We need to think Africans in terms of employment. No matter how someone's accent may look like, no matter how someone may, but as long as that person achieved what the government of Canada requires in order to be placed into the employment, to be placed into any activities including Canadian and other races, they should be considered because of their past and present contribution. To learn more about the contribution of Black history, the Minister of Multiculturalism directed you through Canada Military History. You go to Canada Military History. Canada Military History, that's where African studies are found. African or Black contribution can be found. We have what you call the Blackville in Nova Scotia. These are the founders in Halifax, Nova Scotia, composed almost entirely of Black residents, raised just in the last centuries. The Blackville, as the community developed, leaders struggled to access common municipal services including education, water, policing. Conditions degenerated over the years to become known as slum. In 1964, the city of Halifax relocated 400 residents, destroying a community that had been built strong sense of historical continuity. 1964, all African blacks, the black people in Halifax, in Africville, they were relocated and the community destroyed. Now, the black history, the black races, they just scattered in different parts of Canada. But today, we are celebrating their contribution. Hogan's Alley was an official name of the 4-block long that lane that formed the nucleus of Vancouver. Hogan's Alley, nucleus of Vancouver, first concentrated African Canadian community in Vancouver. Nucleus of Vancouver, Hogan's Alley. It was a black community. Though relatively small, the alley had just a huge cultural impact, offering the Vancouverites unique restaurants and lively nightlife filled with the sound of blues and jazz. In the late 60s and 70s, the community fell prey to the construction of the Georgia Viaduct, but many stories of life Hogan's Alley have been preserved in the local oral history. This Hogan Alley in Vancouver was destroyed. The Africville in Nova Scotia was also destroyed, and people relocated in different parts. In Vancouver, it was replaced by the construction of Canadian, just at the Georgia, and then the community was Georgia Viaduct. This community was also destroyed. So we need to think about Africa contribution. This is my conclusion. Despite all the achievements we have seen, the African and black races, black history contributed in Canada, we need to strongly to include them into the multiculturalism. We need to include their education as major with respect to different Canadian universities, institutions. African education system has been marginalized into Canadian education system. The black history is still marginalized. Some universities pay little attention about it. The new migrants still suffering to find employment, despite the fact that these people, they have already attained education here. About 70% of these migrants are still struggling to find the real employment within Canada. Should we celebrate the history, or we need to think about their contribution? And we set up, we should not celebrate the month, but we should celebrate this month by remembering their contribution, by including the black people into multiculturalism fully, in employment sector, in medical sector, economic sector, and other types of sectors within the government. This is how we should celebrate this month, rather than organizing events, but the black history struggles still marginalized and left outside. Thank you. We love you at AfroPolitical Communications, and this is our role, always to remind you that be subscribed at our YouTube down, and remember that the black history should not be celebrated in terms of parties, drinks, but we should celebrate this month in terms of contributing, collaborating with the black people as it is used to be, include them into employment, respect their education system. Their culture should be included, rather than looking at the black races with a negative eye. We have shown you that many people here, black people, they have been just in politics, education, just into different, contributed into the First and the Second World War, and prior, before the First World War, black people were on the front line. Despite their recruitment was very strict, but they did not get tired. They decided to spend their life to die along with the Canadian people, with the white people. So it's time now to remember them. When you remember your friend, you pay him, you pay for his contribution, but not to celebrate for his contribution. Africa needs to be paid by respecting their education system, by including them into employment, migration services, community, local and regional government. Africa, we need to see them into all parts of Canadian government working, because they died for the multicultural. They contributed, they put a brick during the construction of what we see today, the beautiful Canada. Thank you, and God bless you. Yasini, political scientist, University of British Columbia. Black history should be paid. Yeah. Thank you very much, and God bless you. See you next time. Be free to call us at 604-355-44 3, 4 in case of any question. Thank you and God bless you. Long live Africa.